And scene.
Action.
Hello everyone, my name is Sam Ritchie and I'm here to talk about an interesting topic involving my research, and everyone seems to have their niche involvement in the field. Some do castings, some look at the stick structures, some of the vocalizations and different things like that. Of course, I'm kind of a technical person. I've been a programmer for a long time and was involved in electronics too, so I'm, thoroughly versed in things about electromagnetic spectrum, light, and different things like that. So when Toby was talking about the those voices that were recorded, they almost ringed like a little bit like I don't know if it's like a samurai chat or anything, but it certainly had an oriental sound to it. And what I'm finding out too is that the veil nowadays is getting very thin in certain places. Matter of fact, my book is The Journey Through the Veil, which talks about, we're out here in Greenwater in various spots. There's certain interdimensional places that we go to and actually have all these weird experiences. So it doesn't surprise me that you have cases where there's bleed through, just like two radio stations that are close by and it just bleeds over from one station to another. We're having something like that here, whether it's visually or audibly. So, but anyway, jumping right into this, we're actually going to be talking about what I do in my research. My niche in particular is using the camera. And I started early on because some of the things I capture, of course, I captured some things without the camera. My first really big event, of course, was right after Barb Shoop had her Cloaker event. I was there when that was filmed. That was September 11th of 2014. And I went up the trail the very next day in the same area, and I didn't bring any recording equipment because I wanted to just have an experience, because someone said, well, don't bring any recording equipment because they don't like to come around for that. And I had set my tent for a fascinating experience. Well, I was wanting a Bigfoot to walk up to me and shake his hand or give me a big hug. Well, when I went up there, it didn't quite work out that way, but it was a life-changing event nonetheless, because what happened was, when I walked into what I can now call the field of dreams for the very specific reasons, is the wind whipped up in there and there was no wind down below on the trail. There was this high energy state of euphoria that came over me, and as I walked through this area and started walking back, I saw beams of light shining from off the trail. They were suspended beams of like lightsaber light you see on Star Wars, but they were shaped like Z's, and there were 4 of them shaped in a rectangular box. They were suspended about a few feet above the ground and were stationary, so I could actually walk past it and it stayed in its position. So it was, whatever was there was either the edges of something that was invisible, a ship, a portal, I don't know. Couldn't take my eyes off of it. And I wasn't fearful. I still had that euphoric state because I was going, hello Bigfoots, hello little people, hello this, hello portal, light beams, and I was happy, but I was smart because I was 15 feet away from this thing, and I didn't want to go on a one-way trip or something happened to me, so voice of reason kicked in a little bit, and I just kept my distance, but I carefully walked past it, couldn't keep my eyes off of it. But I did momentarily. When I did that and turned around, there was this gigantic, this is the middle of the day. Normally you just capture these on cameras. But it was like this gigantic ball, beach ball sized orb, with sparkly electricity around it, kind of orangey, that was floating towards this light structure. So this thing moves and slowly goes in the end of this light structure, and it pulses several times and then it just slowly fades out. I came back, I didn't have any physical evidence to prove that. I kept the story to myself for a long time until about a year later when I did a YouTube video. But 2 weeks after that event, I went back looking for any physical evidence of that. And I did capture something on camera. It was a triangle that was seared in the ground. Something had sheared off rock, dirt, vegetation down about an inch in the ground in a perfect triangle in the same spot where I saw that portal or that light beam structure. It has since grown over, but that was a life-changing event, and that wasn't the only one. That was just the beginning of not only mine, but many others like Barb Shoup in the group, Sandy Nelson. We've all had these miraculous experiences out here, and they continue to grow. So I capture things on camera, and that's what I'm going to get into. If I can do it, I've discovered how they appear in pictures, how they appear in general. That's what we got to learn. So let's go ahead and get into this. And if you learn some of these techniques I'm talking about today, you could do this on your own in your own area. A brief introduction. I'm originally from Kentucky. I was a software developer since 1983, a long time. But I moved to Washington in 2002. And at some point in time, I lost my spouse due to cancer in 2010. We've been married 20 years. And you know, in grief, I wanted to get closer to the woods and things, so I got an RV out here in Greenwater. And eventually in 2013, I bought myself a little bit of property, so I've been happily out here most of the time, even though I have a place in Thom. At some point, with all my experiences, I decided, you know, it's time to actually put it together in a book. So in 2016, I wrote my first book. I'm working on a second one right now, The Sasquatch Journey Through the Veil. And I'll talk a little bit about that near the end of the presentation where you can get that. But it's certainly, with all these over-the-top experiences, it has changed my perspective from being a 3D person to someone that just sees things, what used to be sci-fi is now absolute reality. My research highlights right now is that I am working on that second book. And the things I have learned is due to their ability, the cryptid. I call it the cryptids because at first it started about just researching Bigfoot. But you know, there's other things out there. And I'm going to talk a little bit about little people too. That started appearing on my radar in the last couple of years, 2.5 years. So I'm learning how they kind of remain transparent to us, to the average person. Once you learn their tricks, you can actually start catching them on photos and learning how to see them. So they become translucent, they have the abilities, they're masters of stealth. And think about it. Would you want to interact with the human race because of the way we acted for the last thousands of years? They need to be protected. That they have developed that ability to stay stealth and still coexist in the woods. The remote areas are the better places for them, away from us. They don't really want to be around the general population if they can help it. And they don't necessarily want to be seen by them. So taking photos are a challenge, but they can be done if you use good cameras. And when I say that, better resolution, and then there's enhancement techniques with software that you can use to bring out the details even further that normally we can't see as humans. And in my research, although I see a lot more than what I present, I only use the best pictures because the average person is, I'm trying to make that bridge connection between what I see and what an average person can see. So I'm really concerned about enhancing and so that people just don't look, I don't see nothing. And I get that a lot too. And I really rather not get that. So I'd rather just show whatever I can find is going to really make an impact on people. So people starting out in the field of Bigfoot research usually have this idea, oh, I'm going to just grab my cell phone and just run out in the woods. And they're heading out and they're looking for, this is the mindset. I'm going to go out in the middle of the forest, I'm going to take my cell phone, and I'm going to capture the proverbial money shot with Bigfoot. Oh, the selfie, that's right. Look how clear he looks. Usually if they're that clear, you know they're fake. Well, we're going to dispel this little bit of thing here a little bit. Did you know Bob Gimlin was at our conference yesterday? And he was part of the team of Roger Patterson, Bob Gimlin. And he captured Patty back in '67, over, 52 years ago. So So all the people that captured some great photos, and there's a few others besides Patty that were pretty solid looking like this, and obviously by accident, or maybe accident that in their minds, but probably very intentional by the Bigfoots that allow themselves to be seen like that. And with that kind of astonishing clarity, most of the time this is not going to happen if people are purposely looking for them. People may think the Bigfoots, when you take a picture out there or you're looking around, that you may not think they're around when you're going out into the forest. And just because you don't see them with your own eyes doesn't mean they're not there. For instance, you guys take a look at this photo very carefully. Except for the blinding, I'm going to block the light a little bit.
It's this window, I think. Off the
car. Window?
Off the car.
Oh, that is a problem, isn't it? I'm going to block the light here a little bit. Look at that. Okay, you guys go ahead and look around.
Yeah, there you go.
The light was blocking what I'm trying to highlight. Okay, look around me and look in the center of the photo. Do you see anything, or can you make out anything?
Darker.
The
patch.
white dot.
Okay.
To the,
Do you see a face anywhere? Okay, this is what you've got to start adjusting your thinking on. Things have outlines, but they're blending their they're blending their bodies with the background. And we know that happens with chameleons. We know it happens with different kinds of creatures. Well, software enhancement does a great job. Is that a little bit better? This is the key. Well, first of all, you start out looking at a picture like that, and you know, after I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, so I developed this sixth sense of sight, where I can look at a picture and it just jumps out at me. Most people, it's not. Matter of fact, as time goes by, I seem to be that skill is getting better. I go back at old photos I take, and I'm finding new things that I didn't see before. It's absolutely amazing, but it's like practice makes perfect. You study photos like until you're sick. You zoom them out, you zoom them in, you look carefully. The word people like to throw out all the time is pareidoia. Oh, it's just, you think it looks like something it's not. Well, after a while, you'll be able to tell what's a rock and what isn't. It's like, I know some people look at a picture and they'll draw little circles all over and say, there's Bigfoots and all that. There's little Bigfoots all over the place. And Elvis is in my coffee cup. Look how the cream just moved around in there. There's a voice of reason that says there's some balance. But I don't go. You got to know what you're looking for. What's natural, what isn't. And so it takes a little bit of time to do that. There's a little bit of science with this too. Our eyes are very limited when it comes to directly seeing the Bigfoots, as well as there's a lot more out there. I think it was Ron Moorhead was talking about the visual spectrum, remember? And it says it's a very narrow band. However, if you look here, we cannot see. Our eyes are only responding to certain light frequencies. We cannot see the infrared zone, which is the hot zone, like heat, like what thermal cameras look at. And also, we do not see the upper part of the ultraviolet spectrum. So, because our cone receptors just don't simply respond to that range. So, in the absence of any other visible light, what happens when you can't see nothing, your eyes don't respond to light, it looks dark, blackness, okay? And it's giving the truth to the phrase, this is where it comes from. The Bigfoots hide in the shadows because they're presenting themselves in a different color spectrum. They're changing, just like the chameleons, into a color zone we can't see. Well, when you look jet black, you can't see no detail. You just see this black blob in the middle of the forest. But the key is the shadows are going to be lighter than the black. That's where you start discerning just shade differences, Look at this example. There are birds, there's so much different in wildlife. Like you think you see this jet black bird over here just with a yellow beak, but look what happens when you use the ultraviolet camera. Those are colors you can't see. Kids, however, can see part of the ultraviolet spectrum. Did you know that when they're young? They actually see a little bit of the range. You ever heard kids talk about, oh, they're imaginary friends? Well, guess what? Because they're seeing a part of the light spectrum we don't see. As they get older, they don't see them anymore. So they're probably actually seeing beings that only exhibit that frequency. As they lose that, we get older, the eyes, the cornea, and it just starts hardening up, it starts restricting that kind of light. So as we get older, we see less and less. Same with our hearing. We don't hear the ultra ranges. They start going down with time. Okay. This is going to be an amazing video I'm going to come up with next, because people, they dismiss the whole thing about Bigfoot cloaking techniques and Bigfoot's changing color, but it already exists in nature. Does it not? If you just go and look, the proof is there. Let's talk about octopus, okay? I want to show you what this octopus can do. Look carefully. Just jumped out right now. It's going to do it in reverse here in a second. They show you very slow speed how it just totally disappears. The octopus is matching several things: pattern, color, brightness, texture of the algae. It's matching up against the vegetation. If a Bigfoot could do the same thing in front of a tree, you stand a chance of walking right by it and not knowing he's even there. Think about it. So, that being the case, imagine what may be hidden all the photos that people have taken of the forest, if they understand what they were looking for and how to use basic enhancement tools like I did with that earlier picture. Of course, starting with the right kind of camera, using the right kind of settings in different scenarios is a must for serious researchers. A photo that is not crisp, blurry, or out of focus will never yield the results expected. It gets even worse when you're trying to enlarge a photo. The more you enlarge, the more degradation will result. Hence, the need to start with the best high-resolution photo to start with. So if I were to go back in time, I did buy a good quality camera. I was so anxious to use it, I didn't take the time to learn how to use it properly. Learning the basics is essential. There's a lot of pictures I took, I did it in the wrong mode, and I regret it because I wish I had used certain features on it that would have got a crisper picture out of it. So let's go right into it. This won't take very long, but it's very essential that you this is the dry stuff, but that's okay because we need to know that. Okay, image resolution is probably the most important thing you need to know. What is it and why does it need to be as high as possible? You got two things. You got a Canon camera there and you got the cell phone, okay? You're thinking, well, the cell phone picture looks just as good as the other, does it? Well, let's find out. Okay, here I got two pictures I took. I took one with my cell phone. That's an 8 megapixel camera. Now, that may not mean anything when you say megapixels, I hate this, whatever. But a cell phone norm, and however, I think that's my cell phone at the time. I think maybe the cell phone, does anybody know if the newer cell phones have a high resolution, or you guys track any? Can you throw out a number, what 12. They do now? Huh? 12. They're up 12 now. Okay, that's, huh? Oh, well, how much did it cost?
It's just, yeah, the phone will do it, but unless you have a massive amount of memory, you just go, whoop,
Oh yeah,
like five.
yeah. That's the downside a little bit, but yeah, things are changing. You're going to find some, and I'm using this as an illustration right now. But as time goes by, the technology gets better. You're going to have more higher resolution. People are going to be capturing a lot more with the cell phone. So, but I'm using this as an illustration. If you look at both of those pictures, don't they kind of look similar? You think, okay, well, why do I need a 24 megapixel camera when I can have just a quality picture over here with a cell phone? Well, usually the Bigfoots aren't going to stand in front of you like that selfie picture we just showed you. They're going to be in the background. There's going to be some separation of distance between you and them. So most of the time you're really focusing on the background, like looking through the bushes. Your intent is to enlarge the photo to look closer in. Let's see what happens when we enlarge both of these photos. This is an enlarged portion. In the middle of that photo was my little magical reindeer on the pole over there. See it?
Yes.
All right, getting closer. What's the difference?
Pixels.
Right, we're losing detail pretty quickly, aren't we? And you know what? It gets even worse. It still has pretty good over here on the right. Now look how bad it looks. And you still have, it's still a little bit of degradation on the one on the right. I sometimes use more pattern removal from the enhancement tool that actually will, that kind of calculates and softens, makes up for the difference of that. But you can't do anything with this. It's already lost all the detail. And I couldn't tell you how many people send me pictures. I look at the back of the photo in the background. There's a little black spot there. I think there's a Bigfoot. Can you take a look? Well, by the time I blow it up and all that, I'm seeing worse than this. I said, I can't, when it gets to this point, you can't make a determination. You don't know what it is. Don't even go down that path. So what are the main points about image resolution? The higher the resolution of the image, the more details you'll be able to see when the image is enlarged. Naturally, the images will be larger files, so you're going to end up having less photos stored on an SD chip. Like if you got a 24 megapixel, and they're generally about 24 megabytes versus 8 megabytes. But guess what? The bigger the file, the more detail you have stored in it to look into the photo. You got more to work with, more richness to it. Video, let's talk about, I could do a video. I can just take video and do the same thing. Why don't you ever use video? Using still photography, why don't you just take and capture movements and look in the background of the video? Well, there's a problem. Video will never give you the same high resolution as a decent photo. Video, even HD, uses a lower resolution format than a 24 megapixel still camera, so video screen captures will not yield the same results if you try to enlarge those. Remember, photos are momentary snapshots in time, whereas videos have to continuously record over time. Imagine 24 megabytes every second, or every half second. That's even worse than that. It's 1/60th or 1/20th of a second. Within 5 seconds, your file would be like over 100 megabytes. It's just not going to work. So if I can't use a movie, how do I get the same resolution if I can't use a movie camera? Well, thankfully, most high-resolution still cameras have a feature called continuous shooting. Sometimes it's known as the burst mode. This mode will record a continuous series of images as long as you hold down the shutter button. So it's a mode, I think some of you are familiar with Apple does that, different ones. But the higher quality camera is going to do that. Like I have the Nikon D3300, you can capture up to 5 frames per second. And I haven't used that feature. Although I haven't used it, I do make a point to, what I do personally is this has saved me so many times. If I see something, a lot of times it's intuitive. I see the background, so I'll take a picture. I'll wait 5 seconds, take another picture. I'll stay in the same spot very carefully, and then a third picture. And what that does, sometimes, for some reason, I don't get the clarity of one picture, but I get the clarity of another. Sometimes I'll give them 4 or 5 pictures. But guess what? In the space of time that I take a picture of the same area, something might change if something moves. So I'm still accomplishing the same the same objective of the movie camera that I'm doing with still photos. Okay. Oh yeah, this is an important point too. And one that I need to really be strict on myself, that is, if at all possible, if you want to take a picture of the background, you feel there's something back there, please, by all means, use a tripod, because you cannot get enough of a clear image of something that's enlarged in the background if it's blurry. Just if you're taking pictures of objects up close with a camera, usually you can hold it and take a picture. It looks pretty clear. But the further back that you're trying to examine a photo, movement becomes very, very critical in the distance. So the tripod is going to keep the camera extremely still as you're taking pictures. So keep that in mind. Auto versus manual focus. So which should you use? Well, if you got good eyesight, mine isn't necessarily the best sight in the world, I tried that to manually view the, you basically to turn off the automatic, and you're doing this on the camera. And you've got a view screen, and sometimes the sunlight makes it hard to see through it. You're trying to you think you got it clear, and then you take a picture, it's not. It's a little out of focus. I got frustrated with that, so I used the automatic. I use the automatic because it allows me to pick a spot. There's a little square that ends up that you can focus on a particular spot in the screen. That once you do that, you push down the shutter button halfway, and it'll go, you'll see the thing go doing this trick, and it will do an automatic focus in that of the area of the little square that you moved around. Because sometimes you want to highlight what's up front. If I want to take a picture of a flower in a background, I'm going to put the focus on the flower so it's crisp, but the background's going to be blurry. You can't have both, usually. However, in most of our work or research, we definitely focus on the background, so we want to make sure we put that focus window on the background, because the stuff up close, we're not, unless there's a reason for it, and you're focusing on the background, please, you got to do that, instead. What's ISO, and how's it related to shutter speed? ISO basically is the sensitivity of the image sensor, okay? It's the same as in film photography. The lower the number, the less sensitive your camera is to light, and the finer the grain. So if your camera is set to automatic mode, it will find the best ISO setting based on environmental lighting. If the sun is out, the ISO will of course be much lower. It has to turn down the sensitivity than a cloudy day. If you don't put it on automatic mode, if you set the ISO manually and it's bright sunlight, you might end up with just a white photo. I mean, everything's too bright at that point. So that's why it's so critical about the balance and stuff like that. So in manual mode, just like I said, if you set it too low, the photo will degrade because there's not enough light being sensed to give you a real clear image. It'll look kind of grainy. So if the ISO, of course, is set too high, that you'll get that whiteout condition I just mentioned. Here's a guide to some of the things, if anybody's taking notes, or I'll probably make this available on video or presentation. I got this guide that kind of gives you some ballpark figures on what ISO settings that you might want to set if you're doing it manually. Shutter speed is a little bit different, really, whereas ISO is about the sensitivity of the camera itself to light. The shutter speed will determine how much light is going to come in the camera in a given period of time. Like most of the photos I do, for instance, is 1/60th of a second. And if you take photos like in the late evening or night, it's going to require much more light, and so the ISO is going to have to be a lot higher in the light sensitivity department. And like if you want to take a picture of the stars, I never could figure this out. That's one of the things is I'm telling you these hints and everything. I thought I could just take my picture, take a nice picture of the blood moon when we had it, and nothing here. So here's what's important. You gotta have the sensitivity as high as possible, so ISO's gotta be high. You have to use a tripod and point it to the sky because the camera's gotta be really still, and I'll tell you why. Because the shutter speed will have to be manually set for at least 2 or 3 seconds, not 1/60 of a second. It's got to literally sit there with the shutter on for a couple of 3 seconds, and it'll be playing. Then you'll have the most brilliant sky of lights, stars, or the moon itself. And you might have to play with that a little bit. But like I said, when the shutter speed is that long, any movement's just going to. That's why you see some of these photos, you see streaks of light. That's what they do. As time elapses, just let the shutter open and watch cars go by. They just look like the street, Any questions so far on that? Okay. So there's I'm getting to the end of the dry stuff. Okay. There's one other setting called the F setting, or the aperture setting, and that, whereas you have the shutter that opens and closes, the aperture is actually you'll have a lens like this. It's the thing that determines how wide or how small the aperture to allow light and to come into it in the first place. So there's an interdependence upon that, and so that this little triangle, exposure triangle, shows you different aspects. The aperture has to do with the depth of field that you're going to be able to see. The shutter speed determines motion and can affect blur if it's not done properly. And ISO, if it's set too low, can cause noise in the photo because there's not enough detail, not enough light to do it. Okay, what are some of the things that if I take a picture on a sunny day, where some of the things can affect it? Well, who's familiar with lens flares on camera? Like you take a picture and it's the sunlight. Now, I thought captured an orb. Oh, look at that. They're square and octagonal shaped and everything. No. Digital cameras have this flaw. I don't want to call it flaw. Actually, a lot of artists make use of this because it can create all sorts of weird, wonderful things. They use it for their trade. So bright light can overwhelm the image by causing the shadows to appear darker than they should in contrast to where sunlight shines. I personally, let me see here. Okay, here's what I found when I try to take pictures in sunlight, unless I can find a different setting, is that when the sun's out really bright, you'll see the trees and everything, but what happens is the shadows get too dark. And I get frustrated because when I'm trying to analyze in the shadows become too dark for me to get a good feel for what's in there. So days that are like a sunny day like today, it's not a good day for me to go take pictures. A better time is when the sun's not directly out or it's a bit cloudy, but there's still enough light, like in the daytime, because the cryptids, like the Bigfoots, little people, take full advantage of the sunlight to be in the shadows. However, on cloudy days, they're going to be a little less susceptible for you to be able to capture them. Just some more information on the f-stop. They say sunny 6 is a rule to set your aperture at 16 and bright. So just basically, if you want to read that, it's just giving you some things. I don't use the manual settings too much. To be honest with you, I'm too lazy. If you look at your camera, I did bring it in with me, it's still in the car, but on the top of your camera you see this twist dial, especially on the Nikon and camera. It's got all these different settings on the top of it. Well, what those are is different scenario settings like bright sunlight, nighttime, you're seeing those on there. What they're doing, they're automatically picking all the various manual settings that are optimal for those situations. So by all means, in the beginning, just use the one appropriate for the situation. Look in your instruction manual. That way you're not messing around with a whole lot of different things, okay? If you want to get into it a little bit deeper, then you can get into the manual settings and critique your style, see? Okay, we got past the camera part, mostly. But now there's a setting in the camera that says, okay, now we got to deal with format. Well, when you take regular film camera, that wasn't much of a deal. It just had film and developed it. However, your camera has different settings for how it's stored in the camera. I made the mistake when I got my Nikon, was I was doing what they call raw format and JPEG. Well, I thought I was having a problem with raw format because I had a lousy computer that didn't display raw format very well, so I turned it on JPEG for a while. Well, that's a compressed mode, and it does not carry over very well because it destroys the detail when you try to explode it, and when you try to enlarge a JPEG picture. It's just like the early example I gave you of the cell phone picture. The more you do this to enlarge it, it gets crappy quick. It degrades quick. What you need is, you need to have a file that's stored in your camera for as much detail as that camera was built to store. If it's 24 megapixel, you better have 24 megabytes and stored in a file. So what I do now is I change it, I do both. I do JPEG and RAW format, okay? So, and it saves it for each one. Now there's, some cameras might have what they call a TIFF format. You can also use that too, as long as it's not compressed. And also the nice thing about TIFF files is that's the standard they use when they're, if you want to go and put that in printed form or something, that carries over. It's made for that, so you can print it out on paper or photographic paper with a printer. Keep in mind that the better quality stored picture is just going to take up more room on your computer, but since you can get an SD card with umpteen gigabytes on it, that's not much of a problem anymore. So don't let that sway you from doing it. One other note that I didn't put in here, and it's very important because I've already had several people victim to this. Just because you put it on your camera and you think, oh, I'll transfer it to my computer, and I've spent 4 years doing research and all my pictures on the computer, and then my hard drive dies and I lost everything. Do not make that mistake. Buy a backup unit. I couldn't overemphasize that. I've already had 3 friends that lost all their work because of that. And it's such a simple thing. You can get these little hard drives, USB, you know, like 2 or 3 terabyte or 4 terabyte, and even higher. But please, put everything in a folder and back it up. And even then, don't overwrite your backups, make new backups, and even have a secondary backup. So I can't overemphasize it. If you walk away from anything from this class, that's an important one too to remember. Okay, now you got your photo, it's been stored in the right format. Let's talk about photo viewing software. Okay, and this is usually built in the computer. For instance, Windows I like because photos, you click on it and goes, and what I like a touch screen the best because I can do this, just like on a cell phone. I got the big screen. That's important because, and if you're going to view pictures and you're trying to find something, also another note, turn the lights down around you. Make your room very dark so that only the screen is lit up. You're going to be able to find things much easier that are hidden on the photo. And so I like photos for that. And what I do then is when I find a large area that I need to get to, I'm a little bit more techie, but you hold the control key on Windows and push C, and that copies it to the clipboard. Then you can go right on to Paint, open Paint up, and do Control V, and then it pastes it on Paint. And then you can save it at that point, whatever you're working. You can crop it or whatever. So become very familiar with Paint. Learn how to use some of the stuff like that in the viewing. Now, if you're on the Mac, I don't know anything about Mac. Who knows anything about Mac? Okay, does anybody use Fish Viewer? Viewer. However you say that. Pro? Don't know what to tell you about it. It probably does what you need to do it for exploding things or copying things off of screen capture. So here's some important points. and this is another one I'm going to get steamed up about a little bit, but what's the point if you have high resolution photos, decent viewing software, but your computer's graphic cards and screen are crap or low resolution? Do not expect to use a $150 computer with lousy graphics to see a raw image photo. When I started out, when I said I stopped using it, it was because the screen was so crappy that it just started little squares like pixelation. It didn't have enough of the memory capacity to display those kind of images. And you need that. You need a decent computer to do this work. You can't go cheap. I mean, they're coming down in prices, so you can get a decent computer now for $300 or something, $300 or $400 on sale. Cryptids are not the easiest thing to see on photos, so why try to view them on a cell phone screen and then complain that you can't see anything? I couldn't tell you how many times I've actually go and post something on Facebook, and then and I tell them, it says, well, this is, looks good on the computer screen. They get their cell phone, God knows what they're using, and they're trying to see it in sunlight, and so I can't see anything. Well, what do you expect? Come on, it's not rocket scientists to think about those points. There is the need to have the right kind of camera, computer, software, and screen if you're going to be serious about doing this work. Pure and simple. Now we'll talk about the enhancement software. We already got it. Let's say we got enlarged something. We got it captured on Paint. Now we're going to pull it into this. I use Photoshop. Well, it's not Photoshop, it's called Paint Shop. It's just like Photoshop, but I use Cantrall. Now, there was this thing, oh, your photo was Photoshopped. It's fake, you Photoshopped it. What people don't understand is that people take regular pictures of people and bring out the details that's already there. Now, you can use Photoshop to actually screw up. I mean, you can actually over-distort something so that you destroy the detail. We're going to talk about basically some image tools that, how are we doing on time here? Because I didn't, okay, we're getting, this is not bad. I'm getting close to it. So I use this to just simply use certain enhancement tools to bring out some of the details. And I'm going to bring out the ones that I found that work the best. What I got here, of course, is, you see this image? This just so happens to be when I was at Barb's house. I was looking at Gabby's grave. We passed away last September. And I'm intuitive, so I got a little bit of psychic sense going on already. I'm looking across the way, and somebody's watching me, so I took a picture of the background. Up by this leaf, this little guy was here. He was watching me. He's only 6 inches tall. We have a lot of little people that run around up here too, including Bigfoots. I see the Bigfoots every so often, but I do capture some amazing images of the little people as well. And only certain enhancements, like I said, to bring out the detail, because what I find a lot of times is they show up in the photos tend to be very dark. And that's the thing that they love. They love to be dark shades, dark tones. You need to bring up the light. You need to bring up the light for average people to be able to see what's there. This just so happens to be one of the little Bigfoots that was just about 6 miles down the road. But I'm just highlighting it in this a little bit. Okay, this is giving you an example of just one feature is called light, fill, and clarity. Look at the amazing results of taking a dark photo over here. This was during the convention. And so I looked at this picture. It was submitted from me from Claire when we were doing the Barb and Gabby camp out thing on Friday night. And I said, this is not good for a projector. I want people to see the photo better. So look at the amazing difference. You can actually see the tree line and everything. Look how much more detail you're seeing. Well, all this is hidden in here. It's not just black. So there's amazing things. Light, fill, and clarity is probably the best enhancement feature on Paint Shop. So here's the ones I use the most. Brightness and contrast, light, fill, and clarity, color vibrancy, sharpness, and especially noise removal. And sometimes noise removal is important when you're enhancing. I wish I had a 50 megapixel camera versus 24, because then I wouldn't have to deal with this. But you start to get a slight pixelation, and it helps average it out. So it cleans that up just a tad bit. So the whole purpose of the enhancements is bring out the image details without distorting image contact. Very important. Do not overuse enhancements, or else you defeat the purpose of why you're doing it in the first place. Become very familiar with this and then similar software is a vital companion to your camera in this field of research. You'll discover how cryptids use the lighting. I mean, just when you start examining the photos, you start getting an idea how they use color, how they blend into color, just like the octopus and with the shape shifting or with the chameleon. You'll start to understand, you'll actually start seeing how they'll blend in with the tree color or the bark or the surrounding environment. The translucence, the other thing too, you kind of discovered that they can also become translucent. This is part of that quantum aspect of them. They'll vibrate their frequency and light can actually go through them. But sometimes they're not doing it completely where they're invisible. Hence the predator type thing from the movie, just like we talked about with Barb's Cloaker video, you know. Saving images and sharing on, we're getting near the end. If you're going to like share photos, I got this great detailed raw image file, I'm going to send it to you on Facebook, I'm going to post it. And then I'm going to see, the problem is when you put it on Facebook, it compresses it. So that option doesn't exist if you want to share it with a friend. Like I'm a researcher, people send me pictures. Do not send it to me on Facebook, they compress it. Well, I'll send it into you, I'll send you a file in email. Well, if it's a 25 megabyte file, sometimes the email won't let you do a file that large. So what do you got left? Well, there's Dropbox. Anybody familiar with Dropbox or something similar? Okay, a few of you out there. What that service is for is so that it's a file handling service that allows you to put large files in it and you can grab it. It's kind of like a shared folder of sorts, you know, for you to use on the internet. So you may have to tap into software like that. Viewing cryptids on photos and videos. We're reconditioning here, that goes back to the psychology. We're expecting everything to appear crisp and clear, just like the selfie with Bigfoot. Get our mindsets away from that. We got to change our perception of what we actually see. We also have to have the ability to sharpen our focus, our eyes, to be able to see the various shades of, very slight fractional shades of black and gray and green, for us to discern actual images and outlines. And so the spectrum of visibility is, we're so used to the solid we don't realize there's a translucent or even an invisible portion of it. Okay, the future of our camera and the research is, as we've talked about, cell phones getting better, there's better resolution and sensitivity. And we're interested not in trying to prove anything to anybody. You can't prove anything with pictures. But I don't care, they'll say it's not evidence, it's not workable for evidence anymore. However, it lets us individually be able to peer into a world that we normally can't see with our eyes. Photos and videos should not be viewed as evidence of Bigfoot. No amount of evidence will ever prove that to skeptics unless they have their own personal experiences. This is what we encourage of everyone. Rather, photos and videos should be viewed as your personal portal into their world to further understand them. Here's some samples. This is the encounter I had with the Bigfoot back in 2014 in October. Between two trees, this one was masked in a field of black, but it was moving like a mirage. I was able to use photo enhancement. So if you look at the first two pictures, you can see the head, the two eyes, nose, see the body right here. He's actually got his fist around a branch and he's got his fingers out. He's actually waving at me because I waved at him and took a cell phone picture. And at the time I was using the cell phone, so I had wished I had a better quality camera. 15 seconds later I take this picture. Look how it's changed. He's got his head turned in this direction He's actually got a finger, you can't tell, but I finally was able to discern there's a finger pointing at me. So it's like he waves at me, he turns and looks at another Sasquatch next to him and says, hey, look, someone's actually can see us. That's how I'm interpreting that. And of course, comparison pictures are important. So I went back sometime later, maybe a few months later, see how there's nothing there anymore? That's important too, okay? All right, can anybody see anything in this picture? You got three guys kind of like looking through some branches, right? Can you tell that? Okay, you got this guy, he's looking sideways, his two eyes. You can see he's kind of a bald dude. And you got this little guy and that guy right there with a hat on. Guess where this was taken? Field of Dreams.
Oh, yeah, he said he.
On the other, not a SETI. I'm sorry, I think that's where I got that from. We have our version of Field of Dreams out here, so no. But I may have met you at a SETI before, now that I think about it. But we had it just outside of Greenwater, and it was across the creek. These guys are only 6 inches tall. Can you believe that? Remember I was talking about the little guy looking across the road from when I was looking at Gabby's grave? There's the leaf. Now let me get a little bit closer. See what enhancements can do? You can see the head, two eyes, nose. Isn't that amazing? Now you know why I'm so intrigued with the photo, the whole thing, what I'm talking about today. And then finally I have what I call some manual enhancements. So all I did was kind of trace over the lines that were just slightly out of focus and then reinsert it back into enhancement so that and I do it in comparison with the original so you could see, oh yeah, now I can make that out. I love this one. 2014, I took a picture. It's like I said, I didn't see this before, but I went back and went back all my hundreds of pictures and looked very carefully. And I looked at this wood pile, and if you look at the little yellow circle, watch what happens. I don't know if you can make it out yet. There is a little man there. Nose, he's got a very thin chin. There's even square specks that he's wearing, and that's his head. And an arm that's going out. I could see that myself. However, some of you probably cannot just yet, but I was able to do some enhancement and do it right next to it so you can see side by side. Can you kind of tell that they both look the same? I call him Little Bob. Bigfoot, just this past year, young one. January 10th. Look at a little smile. Can you all see that? How about now? Yep. Here's another one, January 16th. I found this guy hanging on the side of the tree. Kind of looks like Elvis a little bit. I don't know if you can tell. I mean, there's his head. Nose and eyes. It's off the side of the tree. I enhance it a little bit more. So what I find is sometimes I do enhancements. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, and you get all that static around. And sometimes you need to just kind of what I call blur it a little bit. Not blur it a little bit. It's not a wrong word. I use digital noise removal, and it allows me to see what's really there a lot better. So you can make out the nose. The two eyes are pretty clear. Here's the head. The chin, the mouth, and you can even see this is a hand, the arm right here. Pull back, and then I noticed over here, it says, oh my God, I thought this was a face in a tree until I figured out, that's a Bigfoot. Look at this. He's just partially, he's blending in just like the octopus did with the tree. This was in Sasquatch Hills, another third research area we have. Not sure what this guy is, a Bigfoot, maybe a dog man or something, but it's kind of blurred out a little bit there, and so I did a little bit of enhancement so you could see what's there. Can you make that out? See? So the story keeps going on and on. We're leading on so many discoveries that's going to rock our reality of core. It's so strap in and enjoy the ride of our lives if you want to get serious about this. Some of the things we brought about quantum physics and everything, we have portals out here too that I'm exploring, and some of the weird anomalies happen out here, like they talked about some other areas. Even like with Toby Johnson's area, we have our own version of an owl moon lab out here, but it's our own personal little spot. So,
Samantha,
yeah,
do you have these pictures posted anywhere?
yeah, Planet Sasquatch Facebook group.
All right, thank you.
So if you want to find out more, I am working on a second book that's really getting into more of the stuff we're talking about here. I have my original book, The Sasquatch Journey Through the Veil. It's available. Mike Smith back there has some copies available. If you want to check with him, if you want to get a copy, that'd be great. You kind of learn. It's kind of a biography of how things have changed in my life and how it's a great story. There's some of the great experiences that me, Barb Shoop, and others have experienced over the past few years. So if you want to find us, I'm under planetsasquatch.com. Go to YouTube, I'm Planet Sasquatch channel. And Facebook, of course, Planet Sasquatch on Facebook as well. If you want to join, just go there. It is a closed group, so I'll have to approve you, but just simply join and I'll approve you as soon as just go ahead and answer. We've got 3 questions to ask, and I'll kind of know who you are. Just say that you were attending this class, and I'll approve you immediately. Okay? All right, thank you. And I have 2 minutes to spare, too. That's pretty good timing. Yeah, go ahead.
If you're doing, like, camping and doing night photography at a campsite,
Yeah.
would you use a tripod and just have a remote, or like if you wanted to get, like, if you thought you were going to see eye glow or something?
You know, when I went to Bumping Lake, which is on the other side of the mountains here, I'm starting to play with that a little bit because I got the idea because someone else is using this camera to take a picture of the stars. So I'm going to be doing more of that. I'm still learning myself, and what I'm doing today, of course, is passing along things I've already learned. And probably a year from now, I'll have even more stuff to
Yeah, I was just curious about, like,
Yeah. Anybody else have any more questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Your research is kind of opening the whole folklore and myths.
Yeah.
One of those tiny Bigfoots.
Yeah.
They change size, like a chimera or a gargoyle.
There's a lot to be said about. Sometimes they look like mini bits. Sometimes I wonder if the Bigfoots can just shrink their size for some reason and all of a sudden appear like little people. But it's an absolute amazing world. I mean, all I did is show you a sample of what I got. But I got like 100 of pictures or so of littles, Bigfoots, and everything else I've done over the past 4 years.
Littles look familiar, just like the chimeras and all that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where are these vortexes? I want to find one.
Oh, okay. Well, let me say one thing. I had an Indian chief from BC contact me and says, you need to contact me immediately about little people. So I got a hold of him and called him and says, where did you get those pictures? He says, the Indian tribes seen them. They have carvings of them up there. No one's ever taken pictures like that. And says, this first time his wife saw them, my pictures posted somewhere, and says, that's absolutely what they look like.
Wow.
So it was an amazing confirmation that my research is on the right track. Okay?
So where are they located?
Oh, they can be everywhere.
Do you have anyone in particular that I could visit?
Well, this is a special area. You can actually go walk in the woods around here. They're all over the place.
So if I just disappear, then.
Well, don't go too deep. I mean, don't go tramping through the forest here for a couple of miles. We may not find you again. But what I'm trying to point out is that I think they're in a lot more places than people assume they are. They're even in parks. I know a Bigfoot's even in the park and right in the city of Tacoma. So you'll be amazed. Just find yourself a rural area. My book talks about the ideal areas you need to go to find it. Okay?
And what is your podcast? Your Planet Sasquatch.
Well, it's not a podcast, but it's just a Facebook group,
Oh, okay.
Planet Sasquatch. Probably the best place to start there. And I'm on planetsasquatch.com. It's where I have a lot of the podcasts listed that are shows that I've been on before. Okay?
All right.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break.